remember this recipe from two completely different sides of my family. First, my dad's mom, my grandma Teresa, used to make it, and there's nothing really quite like sitting down at the table for something that your grandma made you. My grandmother, Teresa McCauley, she was born in a town called Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. And when she met my grandfather, who was John Doris, she was 23 years old. She got married to him at 25. And in that day, they, all the wives cooked for their husbands, and that was really a sense of pride that you were able to feed your family and give your husband something that he really loved and enjoyed to eat. And so that's where the request came in for the Gwumpkies and for the pigs in the blanket. My grandmother actually never knew how to make it before. We didn't make it in her house, her Irish household. But my grandfather, since he came from Glen Lyon, which was such a Polish populated area, although he didn't have any Polish descent in him, he would always request these Polish dishes. The blanket was hearty, it was warm, it was something that I was eating as a child when my feet were still not even able to touch the ground at the kitchen table. So this is something that I really grew up to love and to enjoy. And then the second time I ever had it was actually at my stepdad's family's house. He is of Polish descent, so it was cool because it was an integration of both sides of my family, and we shared that common denominator of food. This dish is something that I hold very near and dear to me. It's not something that you're going to find on a restaurant menu or, in a cafe or to go or drive-through or anything like that. Gwumpkies is something to me that really symbolizes family. That's the only time I've ever had it. That's the only time I've ever seen it. And I never actually had the opportunity to have it once my grandmother got too old to keep cooking. When I did eat it, when I used to eat it as a little girl, I can remember it. There was such a strong smell associated with it. There's this tomato smell, there's this rich beef smell that comes from, the stew pot, and there used to be just a huge pot on the stove my grandmother was feeding these huge guys, the men in my family. I think one thing that's really important to me, one thing that really affects me, I should say, is that many of these family members have passed on. I obviously had the opportunity and the blessing to be with them, share a meal with them, and just understand their love for me because they were right there in the present. But I know a lot of my family that I, will have for the rest of my life, my children, nieces and nephews, things like that, they'll never get to experience that person in the present. And I think this is a kind of a way to carry on that tradition and to tell a story every time that a bowl or a plate of pigs in the blanket is sat down on the table. You have that opportunity to share something that is so special to you. For me, that would be my grandmother. For me, that would be my stepdad. People that they'll never get to meet physically, but people that I know that my children, my nieces and nephews, the younger generation, will know. They'll know them through me.